we can finally talk about Clorinde. Clorinde, Siege Queen, and Cedo's kit and date of release has just been made official during the 4.7 livestream. Hi, this is Earlbedo, and in this video, I will give you a pre-release Clorinde guide to help you decide if you should pull for her. She will be available in version 4.7 of Genshin Impact. I will talk about her role, kit, and talent so you can see if her playstyle is for you. Let's discuss her possible artifact sets, stats, and weapons too that she can use, and her best possible teams. By the end of the video, let's answer if she is worth pulling for. Take note that we will only talk about all things that are officially released before 4.7. Let's get started. Her role is the main DPS of the team. She is an attack scaling electro sword user whose damage mainly comes from her normal attack through her elemental skill and the use of Bond of Life. Let's talk about her talents, starting with her elemental skill. This is an integral part of her kit, but before we dive into it, let us quickly recall what Bond of Life is. Bond of Life is represented by this glowing red mark on your HP bar. You can get it through weapons, enemies, and characters like Arlecchino and just recently Clorinde. If you have this, your main HP bar cannot be increased by healing. Healing will prioritize removing the Bond of Life before your HP increases. Having or removing Bond of Life will give you buff depending on who gave it to you. Back to Clorinde. Activating her skill lets her enter the Night Vigil state that will convert her normal attacks to this cool pistolet attacks, converting it to electro damage that cannot be overridden. During this stage, she will not be able to do a charge attack. Also, while the skill is active, if Clorinde's Bond of Life is greater or equal to 100% of her max HP, she will perform pistolet shots as mentioned earlier. However, if she has less than 100% Bond of Life, doing a normal attack will grant her Bond of Life based on her max HP, and her shots can pierce through opponents and will deal higher damage. All of this damage is considered normal attacks, so normal attack damage bonuses from artifacts and characters will work for her very well. We'll talk more about this later. There is another layer to her elemental skill. If you use this again, Clorinde will perform certain attacks and healing depending on her Bond of Life. If her Bond of Life is 0, she will perform a lunging strike. If her Bond of Life is less than 100% of her max HP, she will heal herself and the AoE and damage of lunging strike will be bigger. Now, if her Bond of Life is more than 100% of her max HP, her healing will increase and her lunging strike, AoE, and damage will get even higher. Take note that this lunging strike is not considered a normal attack. But just like Arlecchino, there is a catch. When her skill is active and she is in her Night Vigil state, Clorinde cannot be healed by her party members. Instead, any healing received will turn into Bond of Life. This is very similar to Arlecchino, but the good thing is the healing converts to Bond of Life. Also, if she is not in her Night Vigil state, healing will work for her unlike Arlecchino. So party-wide healing like Jean's Elemental Burst will work on her if she is off-field or if she is not using her skill at all. Moving on to her Elemental Burst. It is pretty basic, but it has this beautiful animation. Using it will give her Bond of Life while dealing 5 AoE electro damages. Her passive skills are pretty offensive and are mainly for her benefit. One of her passive skills buffs her normal attack and elemental burst by 20% of her attack, maximum of 3 stacks. She can get stacks as long as she triggers an electro-related reaction, which will most likely happen unless you only use electro characters to non-elemental enemies. Her other passive is also good since it increases her crit rate by 10%, max of 2 stacks. So up to 20% increase when her Bond of Life is greater than 100%. She can get stacks if her Bond of Life increases or decreases, which again happens most of the time. Her last passive skill displays locations of Fontaine resources. So in summary, what we officially know so far is that she is an attack scaling Electro Main DPS, focusing on dealing damage with her normal attacks through her skill and with the help of Bond of Life. With that information, I think we can talk about her possible builds. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe to my channel because I make Genshin Impact guides like this almost every week. Moving on with her artifact sets and stats. You generally want an attack sense, electro damage bonus goblet, and crit circlets for her, just like a typical electro DPS. Now, although she is an attack scaling DPS, it is important to know that she is also an electro character, which means she can trigger powerful reactions, namely Quicken, Hyper Bloom, Electro Charge, and Overload. the first two being the most powerful. We need to take these reactions into consideration when building her since EM and certain artifact buffs will matter because of this. For her obvious best in slot, it is the Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy, which is Arlecchino's best in slot too. The 2-piece set directly buffs her since it gives her additional attack, but what's important is the 4-piece set effect, which will increase the wearer's damage when Bond of Life increases or decreases by up to 54%, which is insane. This is great since it doesn't only buff her normal attack but all of her damage. This artifact set will work for most of her possible teams, so if you're planning to min-max her, you might want to invest your resins here. But there is one contender that can be at par or even better than Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy. That is the Thundering Fury. And I mentioned earlier, it is important to note that she is an Electro character, and this sets happen to be very good for Electro Vision wielders. 2-piece set gives her 15% Electro damage bonus, which is already great. The 4-piece set effect is perfect when she is in a reaction team. It basically buffs all Electro-related reaction by a lot. This is specifically good if you play her with a Dendro support or play her in a Quick Bloom team similar to Cyno. Another great thing is it also decreases the skill cooldown when Electro-related reactions are triggered. This gives a possibility of quick swap gameplay like when using Kachain. The only downside is this might not work for hyper-carry teams where your supports are composed of Geo characters like Zhongli and Yunjin, and Animo characters like Kazuha or Sucrose since Crystallize and Swirl cannot trigger the 4-piece effect. But overall, I think the most efficient thing you can do is to farm for the Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy, then craft Thundering Fury. But what if you don't like to farm? Are there any other artifacts you can use? Of course, and I'm pretty sure you have a complete set of the next best artifact for her, especially if you are on higher AR. That set is the Gladiator's Finale. I made a whole video explaining how broken this set is, but essentially, 2-piece set gives her additional attack and the 4-piece set buffs her normal attack damage by 35%. Whimsy has 54% damage bonus, right? While Gladiator has 35%. The difference might seem huge, but remember that Gladiator set with better substats will outperform the 4-piece Whimsy. If I have Clorinde, I will do exactly what I did with Arlecchino. I use 4-piece Gladiator's Finale and call it a day since that set is very trusty and efficient. There are more artifact sets that Clorinde can use. One is slightly behind the first 3 but is still generally good for her, which is the Gilded Dreams. It gives both attack and EM to the wearer. The other one is, I think, the worst of all, the Echoes of Offering. I don't recommend this at all because the effect is random and performs worse with high ping. Lastly, the Marechaussee Hunter, which is ironic that this is not her best in slot since she is a member of Marechaussee Hunters, but it is essentially good when you have Farina, but not as good as the first 3 I mentioned. It's relieving that she has a lot of artifact set choices, but how about her weapons? She will have her best in slot, which was announced but the stats are not available yet, but obviously this will be the top 1 weapon for her. Other best 5-star weapons are the following. First is the Mistsplitter Reforge. Aside from the fact that this will fit her design very well, this gives her high base attack and 44.1% crit damage. Although not the highest, this is more than enough. This also gives her tons of elemental damage bonus, so that is why I can say that this will probably be her second best in slot. Next 5-star weapon is Ayato's best in slot, which is the Haran. This gives average base attack for a 5-star weapon and also crit rate. This also gives elemental damage bonus and normal attack damage bonus, which will directly buff Clorinde. Another good 5-star is the Light of Foliar Incision. The crit damage here is insane, up to 88.2%, and it also gives a small amount of crit rate. That alone is already a good reason to use this, but this is mainly for reaction-based teams since the buff for normal attack and skill is based on users' EM. You won't necessarily need to stack EM for Clorinde, but it will be more useful for reaction teams, of course. Lastly, the Primordial Jade Cutter is a good stat stick weapon, although not the best choice. For 4-star, I think R5 or even R1 Black Sword, if you have the budget, can be a competitive sword for her since it gives her crit rate and buffs her normal attack. Charge attack buff and healing won't work for Clorinde though. Lion's Roar will also be a great choice since this buffs her damage when enemies are affected by Electro, which of course happens every time. This is a cheaper alternative than those I mentioned before. Lastly, the Star Glitter Sword Blackcliff will be an okay choice. You will mainly use this for crit damage stat, but I'd rather use the Lion's Roar. There are many other choices, but I think the one I mentioned are those that will surely work for her kit. So I don't think you will have any headache building her, even if you think you won't get her best in slot. Clorinde has similar team comps as Kaching and Cyno. You either want to make her a selfish DPS or a driver. Starting with her hyper carry team. This team is F2P friendly since you won't necessarily need 5-star characters to make it work. Supports like Bennett provide tons of attack. Sarah will provide attack too and activate Electro Resonance. If you have C6 Sarah, this will surely be more worth it. Normal attack buffers like Yunjin, especially with C2 that gives additional buff, and C6 for attack speed is great too. Sucrose is also a good choice since she can wear the Viridescent Venerer set to debuff enemies and can also give elemental damage bonus. See, you won't even need 5-star support for this to work. However, Zhongli and Kazuha make a world of difference. Zhongli can provide more survivability and also debuffs enemies. Kazuha on the other hand gives elemental damage bonus while providing top-notch crowd control. The next team is Quicken team. Here you need to pair Clorinde with a consistent Dendro applicator like Nahida, Traveler, or Yao Yao to trigger Quicken. You want to avoid other elements, especially Pyro, for Clorinde to trigger Aggravate, which will buff her damage by a lot. So you can have 2 Dendro supports here. And the last one is a flex slot for other supports that can either be another Electro like Sarah or Anemo like Kazuha. Geo like Zhongli can work too since he doesn't interact with Dendro. Next is Hyper Bloom team. Similar to Cyno, Clorinde will not only deal damage from her normal attack but also by triggering Hyper Bloom. In this team, you won't see the highest normal attack damage, not the highest Hyper Bloom damage too, since Clorinde is attack scaling while Hyper Bloom is based on EM. Regardless, it is a very strong team. As a general template, you need one Dendro applicator like Nahida and a consistent Hydro applicator like Xingqiu and Yelan who also provides tons of damage. Another team you can try is the Overload team. This team is even made better with the release of Jevroos. With Jevroos, you should only use Pyro and Electro. Coincidentally, the strongest 4-star buffers in the game are Pyro and Electro. So the team should be composed of Clorinde, Jevroos, Bennett, and Sarah. I am personally excited to try this team, if I get her. The last team I recommend is the Taser team. Here you just need to team her up with consistent Hydro applicators like Xingqiu and Yelan. They will not only defeat the enemies through the reaction, but most importantly through their personal damage. Now to answer the $1,000,000 question, is she worth pulling for? The answer is yes and no. This depends on your priority and account. If you do not have a powerful 5-star main DPS, Clorinde can be a good choice. She has a well-rounded kit that is slightly similar to Arlecchino and Kaching. She is also very F2P friendly with lots of team comps. However, if you already have tons of DPSs, for instance you just got Arlecchino or maybe you already have Neuvillette or Hutao, I suggest skipping this banner and focus on getting supports instead, since most likely characters like Farina will have a rerun very soon. We reached the end of the video. Again, this is Earlbedo. See you next time!